It's so funny. No one thinks that I'm a small business, but I am. I do have quote unquote hired help, but they're not paid. Like my mom will always come and help me at events. My mom will always be working the tables with me. I did my very first trade show in New York City and my best friend came and worked all 3 days with me. Your closest people are the ones that are always rooting for you and always there. I have everything in our guest bedroom. I package everything up and then my husband drops it off at the post office every morning.
Welcome back to New York's Business Podcast. My name is Jacob Restituto. I'm the host and owner of Restituto Media, a full-service photo and video company based here on Long Island. And today I'm joined with Emma, the founder and CEO, I guess we can call it, right?
Yeah,
CEO of Poppy and Row, children's brand for pajama brand.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to hearing the story, and very unique story and how it started. And you have a unique background in the industry, so I'm looking forward to hearing your story. So please take the time to introduce yourself, and thanks for being a part of the podcast.
Of course. So my name is Emma. I am a former influencer. I kind of like to joke and say retired influencer just because it's not my main focus anymore since becoming a mom. But I've been in the social media and content creation space since 2018. I was able to do it full time for about 4 years. And then I had a baby and everything changed. But when my daughter was born, she has pretty much my skin, very, very sensitive. And she actually has really severe eczema. And I had found that no matter what pajamas I would put her in, she was always getting really bad flare-ups. I just kind of knew that there had to be something better. Like after looking into what the pajamas were made out of, the dyes, things like that. I just knew, especially for the price point, there had to be a better way. And I know I couldn't have been the only mom or parent that felt that way. And having my creative background and just always, I feel like you can't tell a mom she can't do something when it comes to her child. So I kind of took that creative juices that I've always had and had a crazy idea of why don't I just create my own? And then about a year later, Poppy and Rose was born.
Love that.
Yeah.
What is it? Necessity is the mother of all ingenuity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or invention is actually the phrase. So, a couple things I want to talk on and touch on is your retired influencer career.
Yeah.
As you retired, I'd love to talk about the actual process of starting up this company and then how you're actually managing it. And one thing in particular, and we'll get into this in a second, is you mentioned you used your skills as an influencer to now manage and facilitate this brand and what that actually looks like on a day-to-day basis. So let's take it back a little bit from the beginning. And when you say full-time influencer, what does that actually look like?
So that's how I was paying my bills. It was a full-time job, but it was really hard to kind of segregate it because, right, you have a job 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. You get up, you get ready, you go to a place. As an influencer, I had to make my own schedule. So I really had to kind of regiment it as Mondays. I would get up, get dressed, do hair and makeup, and film content. And then, I would film whether it would be, I did a lot of like fashion hauls, body confidence, day in the life, things that I would share, cooking recipes, just really, really anything that just to connect and make, a community out of the followers that I had. And I just tried to treat it as a job, and then it started paying. And then I was able to pay my bills, and be able to live a life off of it, which I never would have thought. I always kind of look back and wonder if that was the right decision because, I kind of stepped away from having a typical career to say, hey, this is what's working right now. Let's kind of run with it. And then now looking at that helped fuel and give me the skills that I needed to form my own brand. I know that that was, the stepping stone that I think I kind of needed to get where I am now.
Yeah, and just to add on what you just said, when you say start your own brand, I would actually argue the fact that as an influencer, that is a brand in itself.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't think that. And a lot of people, the reason I want to kind of harp on this a little bit longer is I think that most people don't understand the actual work that goes into quote unquote influencing.
Oh yeah.
We were talking before we actually got started filming that I have not necessarily in the same field, but within the influencer space, YouTube was paying my bills for about 3 years, and it's a very interesting, a little bit of pressure to some degree too. And I'm curious. One thing I've talked about, particularly on my YouTube channel, and I'm curious if you've experienced this, is once you start getting paid for something, it's an incredible honor, but I found it puts this strange pressure on what you really enjoy doing.
Yeah.
And I had been making YouTube videos for, at that point, a year and a half, 2 years. Every day I'd put out a new video. And then when I started making money from them, this is amazing. And then when it started becoming my full-time job, when I actually stopped other things, I realized, oh wow, the views really matter, and that now determines whether or not, like, I could pay my mortgage. And now,
Mhm.
thankfully, I was always able to pay my mortgage, but it was scary when it was related to view count. And as a creator, I found it was difficult to say, do I want to do this video because I know it's going to get views, or because I actually want to talk about this or do
Exactly.
this? And
Yeah.
sometimes when I wanted to talk about a specific topic, it didn't necessarily mean it was going to get views. And now, am I just catering to making money, or
Mhm. It's almost like being a sellout.
yeah,
Yep.
and you never thought that that'd be the
Yeah.
case, and that's where burnout kind of,
Mhm.
I found, came, and that's why I pivoted. And then when I pivoted, the money wasn't there anymore, but the enjoyment was there. So it's trying to find that balance. So I'm
Yeah.
curious your
Yeah.
experience with that.
100%. I always felt like, in the beginning, I think everything was just kind of getting views, and it was just the way that social media was back in 2019. I think pre-COVID, pre-TikTok, everything was much different, just the space was different. And I was able to talk about a wide range of things, such as just being a woman, being, um, in like a mid-size plus size body, also talking about body confidence, a little bit of nutrition, a little bit of, like I said, like cooking and fashion and things like that. And they all kind of took off evenly. And then as the space started changing, I noticed my views on like fashion started doing really well. And then also linking things, making commissions off of them, getting brand deals. It all started pushing me towards that fashion space. But to be honest with you, fashion is not my passion,
Sure.
So I felt almost like I had to do what I had to do for views, to keep growing, because if you're not growing, someone else is going to be taking that spot from you. And especially when it comes to, like you said, paying your mortgage, paying your bills, you need those brand deals to come in, you need those commission checks. So I almost felt like I was shifting, and I online, and I still have a really engaged, amazing community of women that follow me. But I just felt like I was starting to become an influencer that I didn't necessarily want to be, as just pumping out fashion haul against fashion haul and just really making it a saturated space, and just kind of, I just felt like I was contributing to overconsumption of
Mm.
clothes, and also going to a store, buying all these clothes, returning them, because you can't keep everything that influencers are trying on, whether it's gifted, not gifted. And I just felt that it was starting to change a little bit. And then when I had my daughter, that's when everything changed for me and everything shifted. I did share a lot of her in the beginning. As a new mom, I think sharing postpartum was really important. That wasn't getting views, but the fashion was. So am I going to be selling out and doing something that's not making me feel good and making me make those genuine connections so I can pay my bills? So it was this really hard, like, teetering moment. I shared a lot about my life and my daughter up until right when she started Solid Foods, because I started a series called Baby Bites, where I would share like what I was making for her and recipes and how she liked them. And it was really, really cute. And other moms loved it. They, because you're scrolling, you're like, oh, what am I going to make for dinner? My child's, 8 months old. They're really not eating much. Um, and that was great. And they were doing good, but I wasn't making money for them. I wasn't getting brand deals from them. I was getting brand deals from fashion. So it was a really kind of pivotal point for me, where I, at that point, had the idea of Poppy and Rose and said, okay, you know what? I think it's time for me to shift. My life is changing. I'm becoming, I'm a mother now. And I didn't always want to have to carry my tripod everywhere. I didn't want to have to, prop my phone up in Target just to get some B-roll of me and pushing a cart. Like, it's just my priorities shifted. And then it was right around that time where I said, you know what, I can take everything that I love doing, connections, still connecting with women, but just doing it in like a different space.
Sure. I want to continue on this topic just a little bit longer, than I want to talk about
Yeah.
Poppy and Rose, but
Yeah.
because it's not every day that somebody has a career in the social media
Yeah.
space, and I think that people, uh, it's something I think is interesting to dissect a little farther.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But just we'll talk about the transition for a second. When you transitioned to Poppy and Rose, was it a hard stop with influencing? Was it a, hey, I'm transitioning slowly and while Poppy and Rose builds up, or was it, hey, I'm not making any money anymore, from influencing, and now it's dry. And what did that transition look like?
It was a slow transition at first, because as I'm sure we'll get into with Poppy and Rose, it was about a year of research and development to making our fabric. So it was a slow transition at first. I still had what I think people sometimes don't realize is how far in advance some of this content is shot. So I would say anywhere between 30 to 90 days prior to something going live, it's shot. So, like, for instance, in September, I was setting up Christmas trees in my house for December content, for Christmas content. My husband could not handle it. It was, it's so ridiculous, but that's what you have to do because it's going to be going live and it's a holiday campaign. Um, so it was a slower transition, I think, than what people realize because of how far in advance you do everything. And then during that time is when I was really building on Poppy and Rose, starting with the branding and just making everything. So I was still able to have a little bit of an income while that was, I guess,
Taking off.
taking off. Yeah.
I'm really enjoying talking about this because it's so rare that you get to talk to somebody that has been in the same space as you, and not many
Yeah.
people understand how strange of a life it is,
Oh, yeah.
and how strange of an experience it is. Again, my channel was all music related, but I had a vlog on it, and I would vlog. Gosh, I have at this point I think I have almost 1,100 vlogs. So I
Wow.
vlogged almost every day for 3 years. And I loved it. I loved the vlog. The vlog did not necessarily do as well as some of my music content, which I was frustrated about. Like,
Yeah.
so I had to again continue with the music content, or particular topic of the music content that I didn't particularly like. Uh, but again, kind of similarly, once I made that transition, it was still it was a slow residual. I mean,
Yeah.
gosh, I still get residual income from views on
Yeah.
YouTube
Yeah.
videos I posted 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
But it is interesting how when something that you particularly don't necessarily enjoy within the influencer space, as you're posting this content, you're incredibly grateful for the opportunity because your life looks like nobody else's, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But on the flip side, it becomes a 9 to 5.
It
And
becomes more than that.
well, but more, I'm
Yeah.
saying, let me rephrase that in the sense of like, yeah, obviously you're working more than that, but
Yeah.
I'm saying more in the sense of I actually got up in the morning with not looking forward to going to work.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Which is crazy because how many
Mhm.
people would kill to be a YouTuber or an
Yeah.
influencer? And I actually had that dream job and was not enjoying it anymore.
Mhm.
And it's because it's no different than anything else. It's really about what you enjoy than
Yeah.
anything else. And it's so fascinating how the grass is always greener, right?
It is. It is. I always thought, oh, this is going to be great. I get to make my own schedule. But little did I know I would be working 12, 15-hour days. Like, yes, of course, I had flexibilities. I could make doctor's appointments in the middle of the day. I, could meet up for lunch in the middle of the day with my friends, like things that like you don't get the flexibility to do. But also, too, I think being a woman in the social media space, there was a lot of, I feel like keeping up with the Joneses. Why are
Sure.
they getting views and I'm not? I had a similar content. Why are they taking off and I'm not? A lot of comparison. And for me, it
I
just
think that's
started
anybody
getting,
in the space because
yeah.
not a woman here speaking,
Yes.
but it's the same exact thing. And it'd be like, I did the same video. Why is their video do better than mine, or whatever the case may be? It's like, well, they're
Yeah.
newer than I am, and they have all these views,
You
but I
and it's
understand
it's hard because you can't control it either. Um, Especially, so I was signed with a talent agency, and that's where I got most of my sponsorships and brand deals from. And it was just so hard because if I put out content that I thought was great, everyone was going to love, and it did bad, it's like I felt responsible for that, even though you can't control what the algorithm does. You can't control if Instagram's going to hide it or push it out or whatever it's going to be, that it started taking a toll trying to figure out, oh, what's going to do good, what's not going to do good. And it just, after a while, it, kind of got old.
I understand that. Let's talk about the talent just really quickly.
Yeah.
As you developed your career, how does that come about?
So I had reached out to them. I, was friends with a lot of social media influencers in the space, and I saw the agency they were with, and at that point, I was just getting, so much into my inbox. I just really couldn't manage it on my own. So I had a talent manager. They take they take over my inbox, so to speak. And then they also have their own partnerships with brands that reach out to them specifically. So they're able to get me campaigns that I probably wouldn't have been able to get myself because they have those relationships and contacts. And then also brands that reached out to me organically from organic content that they would, take over and manage that. And then they would get a small percentage of whatever brand deals that came in. But then with that, it's great and you have someone in your corner rooting for you, but then on the flip side, there's more pressure because you have goals and you have quarterly goals, and if you don't meet them, you're
Goals
kicked up.
presented by the agency
Yes.
that
Yep.
will then kick you out if you don't hit those goals.
Yep. So then that was another point of I
Pressure.
felt being a sellout. I don't want to do fashion. I want to connect, and I want someone to open up Instagram and connect with me in a way that they didn't think that they would have. And it doesn't have to be about clothes, but that's kind of where it was trending. And so it was kind of like a double-edged sword, which way did I want to go? And I ultimately decided to kind of step away from it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
relate to this tremendously. It's so interesting. Let's talk about Poppy and Rose.
Yeah.
So tell me how you got into that space. I
Yeah.
mean, briefly touched on it, but like expand on it. What does the R&D look like for that? And what does developing this brand actually look like? You say, okay, my daughter has eczema. What do I like? I want to create a brand. Where do you start?
Yeah, so it could have been very easy. I find so my fabric is a bamboo blend, and it could be as easy as just Googling a manufacturer, slapping my logo on it, and calling it a day. But that's not what I wanted to do. I really wanted to make something different, something that was going to make an impact and just kind of like disrupt the pajama world. I know you said you have a daughter. Your wife probably buys bamboo pajamas for your daughter.
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay, I should have brought you one. I'll bring you one next time. But it's in the bamboo world, people are diehard about bamboo fabric. So what I found when I first, everyone you Google like sensitive skin for babies, they say bamboo is the best fabric for it. So I started buying her some of the bigger brands. And I just found that one, for the quality just was not there. Seams unraveling, a lot of pilling, things that you're spending $38 for a pair of pajamas for a 3-month-old, you expect them to last. And, they just weren't lasting. And I noticed that she was still having really bad flare-ups, and it really just, her skin wasn't breathing enough through the fabric, even though it is a really breathable fabric. I knew that there was a way that we have to be able to tweak it. And obviously didn't go to fashion school.
Yeah.
Like, it's not my forte.
But you were a fashion influencer. You
Yes,
I'm just
yes.
kidding. I'm just kidding.
So it just honestly came from late night Googlings, but during feedings, learning about manufacturers and fabric developers.
How old was your
And
daughter at this point?
I would say 6 months and under is when the idea started and the Googling started, and just trying to educate myself on the fabric, how the fabric's produced, where it's produced, how to kind of come up with how can I make this better, coming down to the stitching of the fabric and everything like that. So those are, late night feeding Google sessions that seem to never end. And then I kind of just had an idea of the way that they weave together the fabrics, specifically for babies with sensitive skin. If we were to weave it and leave a little bit more gaps between the fabric, what would that be like? Because when babies have eczema, you're usually putting on an ointment or some sort of Aquaphor, whatever works for like your kid's skin, but it still needs to breathe, and it needs to breathe more through the fabric. So how can I make that? So I got in contact with a fabric developer, and we just started doing late night samples, Zoom calls at 2 o'clock in the morning here because they're overseas, and just trying to figure out ways to get this done. And
That's one of the benefits of being a new mom starting a business.
You're up at 2
Because you're
a.m.
already up. Look at that. That's
Exactly,
wild. Yeah, that's
exactly.
funny. So essentially, would that be considered like thread count, or is that total
No, it's not necessarily thread count. It's just the weaving of the fabric.
spacing between the
Yeah,
fabrics?
yeah. So if you can't see it to the naked eye, it comes down to like a microscope of how you're able to see it. So once we kind of did a lot of like mailing back and forth of fabric samples, coming up with, okay, this is how I want it to feel. This is how I think we should then take this and do a prototype of a pajama. So we found a manufacturer, and they, sewed up the pajama in it, and shipped it back to me. And then, I had my daughter wear it, and there was probably about a good 3 or 4 months of back and forth mailings of different prototypes to find like the perfect wash. Because also you have to think about, okay, it might be great now, but what about in 3 months of washing? What is it going to look like? Because you don't want to create something that you find out later on really isn't up to par. So there was just a lot of back and forth, a lot of waiting, a lot of redoing fabrics, redoing stitching. And then I call it Demi Luxe. My daughter's name is Demi. So I wanted to kind of, everything about the brand is her and the names as well. So we came up with our Demi Luxe bamboo fabric. So to start it, we take a bamboo that is custom milled specifically for us. So you could obviously go into like a Joann or a fabric store and get like rolls of fabric. That's kind of what manufacturers do. They have big rolls of fabric, but they make ours specifically for us as far as the weaving goes. And then the next step of that was dyes. You know, dyes are a big thing. I think people think obviously consuming dyes are like a big no-no now, but it also comes down to the skin. You know, a lot of places and a lot of these brands will take the cheaper way out and use cheap toxic dyes. And I knew that was something that I wanted to invest in that would be different. And so we use all non-toxic, non-irritating dyes. That was a whole nother feat in and of itself because a lot of the darker colors will fade. So that's another part of, you know, not just slapping it on and calling it a day, going through that washing cycle, making sure the colors are staying properly. And then once we got that down, it was time to launch.
It's an incredible story, and
Yeah.
of the typical entrepreneur of back and forth and back and forth and waiting and not working and this is working. And I think that's one of the, I've spoken in a recent podcast about how I think that a lot of entrepreneurs, the true definition of an entrepreneur is somebody that's willing to work through push through the resistance, I guess, you know,
Yeah.
in a non, what's the word I'm looking, self-help kind of way, but in the sense of like, hey, this isn't working, but I'm really the determination, I guess, would be
Yeah.
the word. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people are like, all right, this is a lot more work than I realized. I'm just gonna move on, or I'll just find another brand that my daughter can wear.
Yeah.
Can you speak on what the benefit, like, so I don't know much about bamboo
Yeah.
fabric. As somebody that doesn't know anything, tell me about it. So
Yeah.
what's the benefit of bamboo fabric? How does it work? Like, why would you use it? And what led you to that route of bamboo
Yeah.
fabric?
So bamboo is, first of all, it's incredibly soft, and it is naturally breathable as well. And then bamboo also does have natural antimicrobial properties to it. So it is really good for babies because all babies obviously have very delicate skin. But then when it comes to having eczema and having ointments on, and some babies sometimes even have to have like topical steroids if their eczema is too bad, then you're kind of going to the next level of you need something a little bit more. And that's kind of where my head was at. I knew I wanted to do something different but still be able to be used by everyone. So not every baby has eczema, but our fabric is just different in the sense of it is more breathable. It's very, very light and it's naturally temperature regulating. So it will keep your baby cool in the summer and then warm in the winter as well. So they're able to be used year round.
So that was my follow-up question
Mm-hmm.
as to some of these great, pajamas that my daughter's wearing. They're super thin,
Yeah.
and I was curious about how does the temperature regulation work with that?
Just having the breathability aspect of it. So it's able to get the hot out if your baby is too hot, like in the summer. Like I noticed my daughter would, if she was in cotton, it's just not as breathable. You're not able to get the heat out and she would just wake up like a sweaty mess. And then in the winter, it's able to keep them nice and cozy warm.
Mm,
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah.
So now let's transition into talking about how you're marketing this and how you have this brand, you have this idea that's now turning into a product, and then now how do you turn this product into an actual selling product? And you mentioned how your time as an influencer and understanding how social media works was a benefit to this. So can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So just knowing the social media space, knowing, um, trends come and go, things like that. Just having that background knowledge really helped. Also having a lot of contacts in the social media space, gifting influencers, knowing how all of that works and knowing the backgrounds of brand deals and things like that was a really, really big help as well in the beginning. And I think just connecting with other moms, like I will gift, you know, pajamas to a mom that, I'm like, just take a picture and share it. It really does come down to the word of mouth, to be honest. But I really think I just wanted to create a community where moms felt seen and heard. So I feel like it goes a little bit further than just pajamas. So we have a VIP Facebook group, and women just connect all the time. Like they'll post their baby's birthday or, their baby in our pajamas. And, it's just a way to kind of foster a community further than just pajamas. And that's what I really wanted to bring in, the aspect of the social media space, because obviously doing fashion and things like that, I would say like 98% of my followers are women, and the 2% are males that I actually know in real life, like my family members. So just knowing that I had that background already, I wanted to take those women that are moms, or maybe they are going to be a mom one day, and just kind of give them the next chapter of my life, but still being able to stay connected just in like a different space.
So you mentioned gifting.
Hmm.
You mentioned influencer marketing, and one of the ways you do that is by gifting
Yeah.
product to the influencers. Can you elaborate on that in the sense of, are we talking micro influencers, like local micro influencers,
I,
large influencers,
yeah.
and then,
So
but also, hold on a second,
yeah.
is even how you even get the product to the influencer? Because I think that a lot of brands would benefit from knowing, like, okay, I want to get my product into these influencers. Are you asking, are you paying them? Are you just sending the product? Like, what does that look like? And how this way other brands can try to replicate and say, I want to do something
Yeah,
similar.
yeah. So influencer marketing is huge. I and don't necessarily look always at follower count. I think micro influencers are very underutilized, and I think they are the hardest working, and they can get you the most views, the most sales, whatever it is you're looking for. So to this day, I still have not done a paid collaboration. To be completely honest, I'm a small business. I don't have the budget for it. It's just, it is what it is. And I would never want to, um, being in an influencer space, I understand that this is how they pay their bills. So I would never want to ask someone to do something for free that they normally wouldn't do. But I think everybody knows or knows someone that knows an influencer at this point, So for me personally, obviously it was a lot easier because I had a lot of friends in the industry. So I just reached out to a couple of the ones that I personally have connections with and spoke with, and that are moms. And I said, hey, I'm launching this. I would love your honest feedback. You don't have to share, but if you share, tag us. And that has gotten, it has done pretty well. Obviously paid collaborations can do really well also, but just some people don't have the budget for it. And I would never want to, like I said, tell someone, oh, sorry, I can't pay you, but I expect you to do X, Y, and Z just from being in that space. So I really think just finding local influencers to you, people that have the same passions as you, and just offering to collaborate in any way, or just gifting and saying there's no strings attached, but if you love my product, then definitely, make sure you tag us if you post.
So one thing that you mentioned within that is you mentioned understanding trends and how the industry works. And it's funny how life works out in the sense of, you start out as an influencer, then it happenstance fashion goes off. So you start to understand the fashion industry within influencing. And then you want to pull back, totally understandable, but then you also have a daughter that has eczema. So you start up a fashion brand.
Hmm.
Isn't it funny how life works out in the sense of now you have all this understanding about how social media works, and you can use all that for your next venture. I think all things happen for a reason, and it's very
Yeah.
funny. But that being said, can you elaborate on when you say we like to utilize trends and how the industry works? What does that actually mean?
So as far as like, I'm going to use TikTok for an example, because I think that's where a lot of trends are coming from. Trending audio, funny sayings, funny, how they have some reels that have like a video over it of like someone mouthing something funny, doing things like that. And I think also too, is looking at what your competitors are doing. So someone that's in a similar space to me, like some of these other brands, I wouldn't necessarily say obviously copy exactly what they're doing, but see what they're doing. Are they doing, is what's taking off for them things with, say, kids in pajamas, just B-roll of that? Is it flat lays, just the pajamas on, a pretty background? Is it a mom sharing a day in her life and just featuring the product? Like, what's kind of, where in your niche are things going? What is a trend? Like, where are the trends going? And then just using that and then putting your own spin on it. And I think also too is the problem with social media is people hesitate and they don't just post the content. And I'm guilty of this because I am a perfectionist. So if one thing is not perfect, sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm not posting that. oh, I didn't get the best shot, I'm not putting that outfit back on again. No, I'm not doing that. You just got to post the content. Like, no one's going to see that imperfection. I swear you're the only one that's going to see it. But I think people kind of just hesitate too much. And especially with trends, they're here today, gone tomorrow. So just post it. And at the end of the day, you never know, what's going to take off. One thing that I've learned when I first started being an influencer is to never say no to an opportunity. Even if you think it might not be the best fit, just give it a chance, because you literally never, ever know what can
In
come
what
of it.
sense? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So when I first started, I was just doing a lot of like gifted campaigns, because at this point, the influencer space wasn't what it is today. And I was sharing a lot of, body confidence content at the time. And I had someone reach out to me from Media Drum World, which you probably have never heard of. I never heard of it. It's some tabloid in the UK. And this woman reached out and was like, I'd love to write an article on you. Okay, sure. Because I had one Instagram post like do really well about like showing my cellulite or something like that. And I was like, yeah, sure. So I did an interview over Zoom, and like that was it. Like, it was just the silliest, like, no name publication. And I remember at the time, my mom's always been my biggest supporter. So she's always Googling, oh, Media Drum World, what is that? And it had some like, it had almost like a TMZ style to it, where she's like, oh, these are like bad things. Like, don't do it. I said, no, I'm just going to do it. It's an interview. Like, it's not a big deal. So it came out, it got picked up by the Daily Mail. And then 3 days later, I had Good Morning America messaging me and calling me to be interviewed for Good Morning America about body confidence. And it was just a whirlwind to be on Good Morning America from sharing an Instagram post that if I, one, would have never shared the post, or two, never taken that interview, it never would have kind of spiraled into what it was. So I always look at that and remember that and say, don't say no to an opportunity. Just take it. And if, nothing comes of it, like, it's whatever, it is what it is. But I think, especially when you're starting out, just make connections, take the opportunities that you can, and you never know what can happen.
I couldn't agree more. And one thing, it's funny how similar topics come up in conversations. And I was again just talking to somebody in another interview saying how very similar in the creative space in the music industry, but also just in content creation in general, is so many people press record, film it, edit it, and they're like not happy with the product, particularly in the music industry, in the sense of like, yeah, this song isn't exactly where I want it to be, so they never release it. And it's like, yeah, but you haven't released a song in 2 years,
Yeah.
and there's no opportunity to find you anymore. You get kind of lost in the abyss of the world, and you're not staying relevant. And
Mm-hmm.
no matter how great that song is, it's not heard. And even just in brands, I was talking to this guy owns a restaurant, and he was a client of mine, and one of the things we were talking about is like, no matter how good your product is, your food or whatever the case may be, if nobody knows about it,
How good is it really?
well, it doesn't matter, in
Yeah.
the sense of like, it actually could be the best
Yeah.
pizza in the world, but if nobody knows about it, like, what, like, it's a missed opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And just getting people to know about it, and one of the best ways to do it is just actually releasing the content. And I couldn't
Yeah.
agree more that this is one video on my YouTube channel. I used to go live a lot on my YouTube channel, a lot. And somebody had asked a question in the chat, and I was like, that's a really good question. I started explaining the answer in the video, and I was like, you know what? Hold on a sec. Like, this is a great opportunity. Like, let me just film a video on this. The lighting, and so while I was on live, I filmed the video, and the lighting was terrible. My dog starts barking upstairs. I talk about my dog barking. It's like a 6-minute video. Like, it's ridiculous. Several 100,000 views later,
Yeah.
it's like one of my best paying videos, because so many people just watched it and rewatched and shared it. And it was just a simple explanation video of how something works in the industry. And I was like, looking back, I'm like, this video is horrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, objectively, the lighting's terrible. I'm talking about my dog, like, but people watched it and shared it. And now when you Google that question, my video, like, actually Google the question, my video is the first thing that comes up.
Wow.
And it's like, I would have, if I had filmed it and looked at it now, I would have never, ever, ever posted that video.
Yeah.
Or refilmed it. But then it's funny, I've tried to do like spin-offs of it, like, hey, it's now 3 years later and I want to talk about this again. It doesn't perform nearly as well. And the video is objectively better. It's just,
Yeah.
it answers the question the way it needs to be. So people don't care. People
No.
really don't care.
And I think now too, with the rise of TikTok, people want to see authenticity. They want to see, they don't always necessarily want to see the perfect picture, the perfect lighting. They just want what's real and relatable. And I think, exactly, just post the content. Like just post it and don't have any expectations. Don't expect it to go viral. Just post it. Because like you said, if no one sees it, then how good is it really if you're not posting?
I mean, you get one view is better than no views,
Yep, exactly.
which is it's a humbling thing because you're like, oh, I want it to be a million views, but if you don't post it, it's still 0 views.
Yeah.
So there's 0 visibility. So what's next in the company? What do you see next coming?
I see a lot coming next, which I just feel like sometimes I can't shut my brain off. But obviously, I release new prints every quarter or so. So we're working on holiday prints now, as far as Christmas. And the big thing that we're going to be doing this holiday is family matching, which is things that people have been asking for adult sizes for, 2 years. And we're finally going to be releasing that. That's a big, as far as being a small business, a really large chunk of inventory, having, men, women, and then adult kid sizes as well.
Do you hold inventory or so
Yep.
so then you ship it out or how does that work?
Yeah. So a lot of it's so funny. No one thinks that I'm a small business, but I am. I have everything in our guest bedroom, packed to the brim. I mean, everything is on nice shelves, everything is labeled, but I ship everything once a day when my daughter goes to sleep. I package everything up, and then my husband drops it off at the post office every morning.
Are you familiar with Sarah Blakely's
No.
she's the owner of Spanx?
Oh, yes,
So
yes.
is that her? I think it's Sarah Blakely, right? I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
if it might be the wrong last name, but point being though is she started Spanx if you're familiar with the story, she started Spanx in the exact same thing. She's like in her apartment. She has the spare bedroom filled with Spanx, and now she was like I think the youngest woman billionaire out there or something
Yeah,
like
she
that.
was on Shark Tank. That's how I
Yeah,
remember
exactly.
hearing her story. But yeah, I am a one-woman show. I do I mean, so hold on. Let me backpedal a little bit. I don't do my photography. I have a photographer that does all of that, because that is not my specialty. I know where my strengths are, and that is not one of them. And I do all the social media, all the marketing, all the back end, all the customer service, all of the packing, and all the shipping. My daughter actually loves to help pack orders for mommy's company. It's really, really cute watching her. And she calls it my company. So I'm hoping one day to be able to have it be
That's
successful
cool.
enough to pass it off to her, because when I go to the post office, she likes to carry one of the packages in, and just kind of showing her, even though she's 3, she doesn't have the full concept of it yet, but just having her be involved in this. When we get big orders, and UPS is at my door with 16 boxes, having her open them and looking at them, like it's just involving her, and it is really kind of like a full circle moment because she's the reason why I started it. Um, but then I do have quote unquote hired help, but they're not paid. Like my mom will always come and help me at events. When I first started, and I still do like pop up events on Long Island here, I'll do some like farmers markets just to get my name out, make connections in the community. My mom will always be working the tables with me. I did my very first trade show in New York City, and my best friend came and worked all 3 days with me. It really is a team effort, even though your closest people are the ones that are always rooting for you and always there. When we did our first photo shoot, it was my 4 close mom friends and their babies just in a studio, just making chaos. And it's, you can't do anything alone. So I even though I do a lot of the back end stuff alone, it really is like a team effort to get this up, off the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. I relate to that tremendously. The
Yeah.
amount of free hired help that I've
Yes.
had is remarkable. I want to then talk about the fact of first I want to talk about inventory, and then I want to talk
Yeah.
about like the next steps in business. Inventory that doesn't sell, what do you do with it?
A couple things. So we had one example is we had our Christmas prints. Whatever is left over, I put on sale, at the end of the holiday, that people, if they want to get the next size up for next year. And then I actually donated the rest of them to the not wildfires, the fires in LA. So all of the families that lost everything in the fires, all the babies that needed clothes, even though they were, Christmas prints, but, being able to make sure that they, are still being used. So that was one thing that I did with them. And then if it's not like a seasonal print, so to speak, something that's kind of more timeless, like our checkered prints or things like that, I just hold on to them and wait until they sell, because they will
At some
always
point
sell.
it'll sell.
Yeah.
Just commenting on the wildfire donation. One, that's an incredibly generous thing to do, and I think that's a great way to use your product and also get your product out there. But also, too, from a business aspect, it's a nice tax write-off that you
Yes,
can
yes.
use in, which is
Exactly.
very cool. Would you ever consider putting your clothing and partnering with local boutiques and getting your clothing
Yeah.
in there?
Yeah, so it's something that I'm actually starting to get into now. Like I said, I just did my first trade show in February. I am in 2 boutiques, one in Massachusetts and one in Philadelphia. So I'm just starting to step my toe into that pool, so to speak. I really kind of took this, again, since I'm the one running the show
Flying
and doing
solo?
everything.
Yeah.
I did it in chunks that I could handle. So I did, direct to consumer. Now that that's kind of running running in the background, now I can kind of step away from that, since that's kind of doing its own thing, and now work on, getting into some boutiques locally.
Yeah, and one of the debates I think that a lot of brands get into is they jump in too far too quickly,
Mm-hmm.
starting with influencer marketing, starting with DTC, starting with direct to consumer for those that aren't familiar with, starting with getting to big boutiques, and now that you have 57 arms of an
Yeah.
octopus, and it's like and none of them are paying at the time because it's
Yeah,
still,
yeah.
so focusing on one I think is great, and then expanding as you go.
Yeah.
So you mentioned pajamas this whole time, and
Mm-hmm.
obviously you're a pajama brand. And what about when your daughter wears other clothes, like just day-to-day clothes? Does that affect her as well? And if that's the case, would you ever consider, even before, I mean, you're obviously doing an adult brand, but adult pajamas, but would you expand into everyday
Yeah.
clothes?
Yeah, that's the next step. So yes, other cottons, jeans, stuff like that still does irritate her. Not as much as when she was a infant, just because we have been able to figure out what her triggers and how to manage them a little bit better. But that is the next step. I'm actually working on taking our fabric and figuring out how to make it thicker and more durable for, like, I want to call it like a play line. So more of a daytime type of wear. But honestly, my daughter's in the pajamas all day long. If she's not in school, she's in them. But yeah, that's the next step, is getting into traditional, everyday clothing wear, which, it's I chose pajamas because it's kind of just like one silhouette, and it's just one thing to start with. And I didn't want to, obviously, it could have done terrible, and I could have, not made anything off of it, not made any money, not sold any pajamas, and then, been stuck with tops, bottoms, everything like that. One thing we did expand into is blankets. So we do make baby blankets, bibs, and bows. Those actually came up as, since I'm buying the fabric and they're making it specifically for me, when they're cutting the pieces to be sewn together, it's the extra. So I'm paying for that, and you're throwing it out. They actually take it and they make bibs and bows out of them. So that's like another way to kind of have little smaller accessories that are a smaller price point. Because I notice sometimes I'll go to and do these, festivals, and someone might not want to buy their grandchild a pajama, but maybe they'll buy them a bow, and it's, half the price. It's a smaller price point to kind of get that customer, get their information, get their email, be able to start email marketing them, everything like that. And also getting them to feel the fabric as well, because all of our fabric is going to be, it's all made from the same fabric. So that is a little bit of what I started. And then the end goal would be, a full line of
Line.
pajamas, baby
Clothing
wear.
line,
Yeah.
What's your current price point for a pajama?
Yeah. So the zippered ones are 32 and the 2-piece ones are 34. We are not raising the prices due to tariffs. So that is one thing I wanted to make sure I do not do. So I'm eating the cost of that just to be able to stay at the price point that I think is reasonable, because some of the larger brands in the company, the more popular brands, they're about between some zippies are between 36 and 38, and then 40 to 42 for the pajama, the like 2-piece sets for toddlers. So I wanted to make sure that I kept it as affordable as possible that we could do. And then I want to make sure that we don't raise anything with the tariffs.
Are they affecting you?
Yes.
Interesting. 25% or what?
Yeah. Yep.
Very
So the last
interesting.
shipment that we just got, was shipped the day before the tariffs were put in place. So that one skated by. But the ones that are coming now,
So
yeah.
obviously, what's been said about the tariffs is the goal was to bring consumption, but also production back to the U.S. Is that an option or is that a consideration that you would do?
Unfortunately, they do not make bamboo products in the US. It's
Mm.
not able to be made. The one thing I can do is make the fabric overseas and ship it here and have it be sewed and manufactured here, but the cost of that is too high. Um, I would have to raise the pajamas price significantly to do that. So I think for right now, at least the tariffs are the cheaper route to go. It, it is what it is.
Part of doing business.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you find that you have to do a lot of convincing at that price point?
Yes and no. In in-person markets, no, because they feel the fabric and people are like, oh my God, do you make these in adult sizes? That's the one question I always get. Once they feel,
Soon, right?
yeah, soon, Christmas. Once they feel the fabric, no. But sometimes it's hard to do that through a screen, especially trying to make the consumer understand that we are different. We're not just bamboo. It is a bamboo blend that is made specifically for us. It is currently patent pending. So it is something that, long game, possibly maybe sell the patent and just sit back and collect money maybe one day. But I always wanted to make sure I did the right thing. I didn't take any, like, cut any corners, do anything kind of cheaply, make sure I do it the right way, because I think that's the building blocks of what's going to make it, successful in the long run.
So this has been a really interesting story, and hearing your story and hearing the transition from influencer to mom, unpaid influencer to paid
Yeah.
influencer to retired influencer, the whole
Yes.
career of an influencer. And it's how interesting is it that we're living in times where now we have retired influencers,
Yeah,
and
right?
I'm in this pretty much in the same category as you.
Exactly.
I still post, but not nearly as often, and it's not nearly as much of my income as it used to be. But mainly because I actually genuinely did enjoy doing it. It just kind of ran away from me. But aside from that, then transitioning to mom and momhood, and then using that skill set that you learned to facilitate this new brand. So it's very interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes, and I really appreciate you
Yeah.
taking the time. So thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank
Absolutely, it was a
you.
pleasure.
It was a
And
pleasure.
to all the listeners out there, definitely go check out her brand, and definitely go check out all the things that she's up to, and stay tuned for
Yeah.
the Christmas coming out, the holiday coming out with
Yeah.
the adult sizes as well. And if you are a business owner, first of all, I want to thank you for listening. But if you're a business owner or you know any business owners, and we're in industry for professionals that you think might be a great fit for this podcast, please feel free to reach out, and we'll see you in the next episode.